We're in the 1-3 game at Capital Casino. It seems to be a little bit passive, so I'm going to be a little more aggressive. This person opens for $7. I raise to 20. I get a call by the button and the person who opened for 7. And we go 3 ways to a flop with 64 in of King 9-3 with 2 spades. So with that kind of flop, I have a gutter. I'm going to leave for 15, see what happens. Just trying to get the feel of what the other players have. The player on the button calls me, and by the way he did, makes me feel like he either has a really big hand or a really small one. So when the turn card comes as blank 6 of clubs, I decided to bet at it again. I think maybe looking back on this, I can probably check this to see if he bet, and if he checked it back, I can steal it on the river. But I ended up betting, he ends up raising, and he doesn't have that much behind. I was thinking about calling just to see if I was getting the correct odds to draw on him, because if he has a big hand like I thought, that stacks were going to go in if I make my hand. But he just didn't have enough behind, so it's just best to let this one go and move on to the next hand. And I think I should have checked that back on the turn. There were a couple limpers, and I'm in the big blind with Queen 10 suited. I decided to punish the limpers by raising the 20, out of position. Maybe not the best idea, but I thought I could get away with it. The first limper puts in the call for the additional 20, and we're going to go heads up to a flop. This particular opponent's more of a fit or fold type of player, so as long as he doesn't hit the board, I think I'm pretty good at a steal percentage. So a flop of 6-5-4 really shouldn't hit his opening limping range. So I bet out 20. I thought he would fold the majority of the time, but he ends up putting in the call. So a little concerned that I'm behind at this point, and very worried when the 7 of spades comes up. It completes just about every draw, and I check it over to him, and he quickly checks it back. This should be a green light for my opponent to take the pot away from me, even if he doesn't have anything. So when he checks it back, I'm just thinking that he is giving up on the hand also. So as long as a blank comes on the river, I was going to fire at it and see what happens. And the river card comes out, and it is a 4 diamonds, pairs the board. I don't have anything. My story doesn't make sense, but I think my opponent has nothing. If my opponent goes to showdown, he might show me something like a king high. I put in a bet, and he puts in the fold. Finding 2 aces on the button is always pleasurable, especially when a opponent from a late position opens for a raise to 15. We make it 45, and everybody folds out except for the opponent who opened for the raise. He puts in the call. His most likely holdings are either small or medium pocket pairs, perhaps a hand like king queen or king jack or queen jack, something like that. Flop comes king jack 10. Not the favorite flop in the world, but definitely in our range, and we're going to c-bet this, so we bet out 25. It's a small bet, find out some information, and he lets his hand go, so it's probably a pocket pair we're up against. Seems like I've been getting this spot quite frequently lately. I have a big blind with ace-king offsuit. There was a raise for 13, and then 3 people call for the 13. So there's $56 of dead money out there. With ace-king, I'm just going to go push my equity and put in a nice size raise. I make it 113. I figure once the first person folds the original raiser, everybody else will be quickly to follow. So he's the only one I'm really watching. And he thinks about it for quite some time before letting it go, but so does everybody else. And we take down all that money without much stress. This is a limp heavy table, and I like to punish limpers. So when 4 people limp, and I'm on the button with king 10 offsuit, it's not a premium hand, but I do have position, and I do have a little bit more aggression than most of them. So I make it 25. I'll be quite satisfied if everybody just folded and I can pick up all that dead money. But that doesn't happen. The small blind decides that he would like to play for 25, and he puts in the call, and we're going heads up to a flop. Now he does something kind of interesting. He checks it over to me in the dark. Not sure what to make of that, but the flop comes 5-4 deuce. Doesn't really hit my range too hard, so when he checks it, I'm just going to check behind and take a free peek at the next card, see what he does. I figured if he had anything, he might go ahead and lead. He checks again. Here I'm just going to bet and take it down. Don't think he had too much, but you know, it might have been better than my hand. All right, this is a $15 bomb pot. We have 7 players active, so we have 105 to start off in the center of the pot, and the flop comes down 10-5 deuce. I peeked at my first card. I know on the camera you can see both of them, but I only saw the 9 of clubs, and I checked it over. because my position wasn't great. I usually don't like to lead. I like to see what other people do before I make up my mind. It gets checked around to the player on the button who puts in the bet for $75. Now, just quickly going off the top of my head, I figure I have quite a bit of equity, even if he has a hand like King 10 with top pair. If he has two pair, I have about 33% equity. With just one pair, I have about 45 or 46% equity with an overcard and a flush draw. So when it gets back to me, I just decide to put pressure on his hand, the maximum pressure. So I jam. It could be a mistake. I don't know. I suck at bomb pots. But maximum pressure seemed to work this time. He folds and I take it down the pot. A few hands later, I look down at ace-deuce of clubs in the big blind. There was an early position raised to $8. Couple callers, and I decided, oh, for $5 more, I'm going to see a flop. I got a suited ace. Flop comes down, king high with two clubs. So I got the nut flush draw, some backdoor straight draws, if you want to even count those. I check it. It gets checked over to the first caller of the $8 raise, and they put in a bet for $20. I put in the call, and so does the original raiser. Turn card now is the Queen of Clubs. Great card, but I wasn't sure whether I should be leading at this or not. I decided to check it, seeing if they would like to continue. It ends up getting checked around. So not the greatest outcome. I was really hoping someone would want to more protect against a one-card flush draw. The river is a five of hearts. I'm pretty sure that they have something and that they'll probably pay off one bet. So I decided to make it a pot-sized bet. If they're going to be calling down that one bet, make it a big one. Why go small? So I bet out 100. The first player now goes into the tank. And I think he doesn't have that strong of the hand, but he just thinks I'm out of line. Because why else would I make such a large bet on such a wet board? I mean, I can't really have it, can I? Anyway, he puts in the call for the 100. And now the second player also goes in the tank. And this is a very competent player who I have a lot of respect for. And they tank for quite some time before ending up putting in the fold. And they later told me that they had two pair on this, and it was a good fold on their part. I ended up showing down the flush, and we take down this nice pot. I think their raise size to $8 was way too small, but I might have came anyway. I had a suited ace. I ended up moving over to a different table, looked down at two aces right off the bat. Player to my right limps in for $3. I raised to 15. He's the only one that puts in the call, so we're going to go heads up to a flop with 34 in. Flop is pretty good. It comes Jack 5-6 rainbow. He checks over to me. I'm going to continue for $15. He puts in the quick call. Turn card comes as a Queen of Clubs. Looks fairly safe. He checks again. I decide to go for some value. Maybe him making a crying call with a pair. He thinks for a little bit and decides that he just doesn't like the calling option, and he definitely doesn't like the folding option. He decides the raising option would be the best, and he makes it 70. Now, he could be doing this with a hand like Queen Jack. That's the most obvious, I think. Maybe he flopped a set of fives or sixes, or maybe he has fives and sixes. Either way, I don't think I can get away from this at this point, so I put in the call. We get to see a river card of a Jack of Clubs, which counterfeits the hands like 5-6, and the hands like Queen Jack just has me totally crushed. He bets out for 120 now, and it's my turn to go into the tank. My thoughts are, what hands could he have that beat me? Would he check raise on the turn with a jack? Probably not. Would he check raise the turn with two pair? Most definitely a set, most definitely a draw, most definitely. Maybe he's just trying to make a play, most definitely. So I counted down all the possible hands that had me beat, and there weren't too many. There's the Queen Jacks, there's the sets, and there's the odd three jacks. Other than that, everything seemed to miss, all the draws miss, and I'm watching him and he doesn't seem too comfortable, especially as I'm bouncing my chips up and down. He seems to not particularly like his situation. So I think I got him beat. I slide the money in, and he just mucks his hand. Later on he said he had two pair, but like fives and sixes and got counterfeited. I'm not sure I believe him. There's a limper from early position. I look down at King Queen suited. Raised to 15, I get a call from the player directly behind me, and a call from the small blind, big blind, and the original limper. So we're going 5 ways to a flop with $75 in the pot. Flop is a good one. It comes queen, 7-4 with 2 hearts. So top pair, second best kicker. The first 3 players check. I decided to bet 35. Player directly behind me thinks for just a brief moment before putting in the 35. He has a pretty decent sized stack and he has position, so I have to keep an eye on him. Small blind folds, and now the big blind puts in the old check raise to 145. He hasn't been playing too many hands, and the way he did this makes me feel like he either has some sort of monster draw like King Queen of Hearts, or he flopped a set like pocket sevens or pocket fours, and is afraid of the heart draw. Now, I watched him, I studied him, and this feels very, very strong. And I don't like folding top pair with a good kicker, but I think in this case, money saved is just as good as money earned. So I decided to let this one go, and so the player behind me, so I'll never really know. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on this. There's a $10 straddle, a couple people limp in, and I look down at 2 queens from the small blind. I put in a raise, just hoping to take this thing down. I was getting tired, cranky. You know how old guys get. Anyway, everybody fold out. I win this small pot. I decided to call it a night. Had a pretty good day overall, so I'm pleased about that. I was just the one hand that I was really curious about was the King Queen of Diamonds, how you guys would play that, whether you would call down. I mean, he had a pretty deep stack and he's shown a lot of strength. I kind of like my fold, but then again, you know, I make mistakes just like everybody else. So let me know your thoughts on that hand. And otherwise, until next time, thanks for watching. Really do appreciate your support. And we'll see you in a few days.